Good morning and happy Friday here from Times Square. We are going to talk about today the true cost of employee turnover and the true cost of an employee, because that matters a lot in our organizations. And one thing that the chamber does is they do this survey every year and trying to understand what are the issues that of business owners in our community and what are they worried about, those type of things. So it could be like things like taxes and all that stuff, but the number one thing in our Fargo-Moorhead community in the last 5 years has been workforce. And mainly the problem there has been finding qualified employees to work with for you. And the opposite, in trying to think about how to fix that problem, is how do we maintain or retain the employees that we have. So if you have good team members, how do you retain those people, because the cost of turnover is so high? So today we're going to talk a little bit about the cost of an employee, the cost of turnover, and then the ROI you get on having your team be very engaged so that you can retain them. So we're just going to cover this really briefly, because if you want to learn more, you can sign up for our course called Finance Simplified, or reach out to me and we can talk through this as well. And we'll put some stuff in the comments so you actually know the math that I'm doing on screen, because I haven't figured out how to share my screen and be on camera at the same time for Facebook Live. Okay, the true cost of an employee is not just their hourly wage and their salary. I know we know this in theory, but it's really 20 to 25% higher than their salary. So if we have an example of somebody making $45,000 a year, so say you, in your head, you've done the market research and you're posting for that level of position that demands a salary for $45,000 a year, it's going to cost anywhere from 20 to actually 50% more than that to have that employee in your organization. And why that is because there's employer taxes, there's any benefits that you have, health, 401k, any of those things are additional. If you reimburse for cell phone, the fact that they have to have technology to be able to do their job, all of those things cost money. So that's why for every employee that you have, you need to increase whatever their base compensation is, anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. So a $45,000 a year salary to you, say I'm posting for this position and that person makes about $45,000 a year, you can go ahead and add 10 grand to that, because that's what it's going to cost to have that employee actually be in your location and giving them the tools that they need to succeed. So the true cost of employee is really 20 to 50% higher than their salary. So we have let's just say a $45,000 salary position that we're looking at. And so that for professional roles is probably a few years out of college, not depending on what profession you're in, if it's marketing or more intense like an accounting degree, then those salaries are going to be different. But let's just say they're out of college, you're going to pay them $45,000 a year, but they really cost you $55,000. So keeping that in mind, the true cost of them is $55,000. Now the cost of turnover, because one thing that is really is different from our parents' generation, which both my parents, my dad worked for the same company for his whole career, starting at age 19 or 18 or 19, and worked for the same company until he was 60 years old. And my mom worked in the same line of work most of her career, even though she worked for 2 or 3 employers, but still over 40 years, 2 or 3 is not that much. Now people change jobs on average every 7 times in their career, and that means that's quite a bit. So we want to make sure that the cost of turnover is in our mind so that we can figure out what our return on investment is for development. Does this make sense? So our cost of turnover, according to the research that we've done, is a little bit higher depending on the type of position that is turning over. So for entry level, it's anywhere from 30 to 50% the cost of turnover. And for a mid-level position, it's 150% of that person's annual salary. And for a higher level, the cost of turnover is closer to 400%. So what makes up the cost of turnover, and this is, we have a really fun graphic that shows this, is the replacement cost. So taking the time for a manager to interview new people, to posting and put together a job description and to reanalyze the position and do all that work, that's about 38% of that total cost of that turnover. And then 21% of the costs is from that job being unfulfilled, or that period of time between someone leaving and someone coming in. So there's a cost to that. And separation costs are included in that are 15%. So that's a large chunk. That's 36% of it is really that inefficiency in time. And then 26% of your total cost of turnover is in training. Thinking about having a new body in there, now I have to take time, if I'm the supervisor, to train them in their new position, and where if I would have retained that prior employee, I wouldn't be spending that time training. Or if there is formal training, then that costs money as well. So there's a lot of costs that go into turnover. So what can you do? I challenge you to think about, what can you do today to minimize your turnover, to think about what really matters to your employees, and would investing in those things reduce the likelihood of them leaving the organization. So it's different for every employee. I know the millennial generation really wants to work for purpose, and what that means is going to be a little bit different for everybody. Some people are driven by money, so having a little bit higher compensation. So even if it's a 5% additional compensation than what you normally would pay, but your cost to turn that person is 50%, you're making money, right? Your return on that investment is tenfold. So don't be scared to pay people what they're worth, or reward them in a way that they want to be rewarded. So if money is something that they draw their value on, then don't be scared to up that a little bit, because it's going to be cheaper to give them, a few dollars an hour more, or a few $1,000s more a year, if that's what they find their value in, than it is going to be to turn them over and to have a new person in that role. The other thing, so that's one, compensation, making sure they're fairly compensated. Another thing that can drive those people, it could be their family and what matters to them. So that could be health insurance, or it could be a balance. So if it matters more to that person to be able to be done at 5 p.m. and go home and love on their family, then that matters more than the additional compensation. So thinking about, well, this position typically is a 50-hour-a-week position. It's a salaried position, so it's exempt from overtime. But you really want to work 40, and then having some conversations and doing some math on what is the ROI of having that person in a normal position that works 50 hours a week but only working 40, and how loyal are they going to be, understanding that whatever line of work that they are in typically demands them to be present 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, or whatever the math is to divide that by 7 days a week. And then understanding that what's important to them, if it's important for them to be done at 5 or to try and work 4 days a week. And it might feel like a sacrifice to you as the employer, but the ROI on that is really high, because the cost of turnover is significantly more than what you will be giving up by not having that person. And they're going to be more productive anyway, because they're more engaged, because you're giving them what they need to be fulfilled. So fair compensation, find out what they like, and if their family life balance matters. I don't like the word balance, because I don't think anything is ever in balance, or if it is, it's only for 1 second. If you've ever seen the balance, like a teeter-totter, or the balance beam that they use in the judicial system, if you're adding weights to one side or the other, the time period in which that's in balance is so small that to try and achieve that is really not a good or healthy kind of mindset and concept. So I work in work-life blend, so the kids come with me to the office quite frequently, and because I own my own business, I can do that. But work-life blend. So if the work and family is important to your team members, making sure that you understand that and that you retain them in that way. The other things would be like volunteerism. Is that something that you can easily put into their compensation model to help retain them? So if they like volunteering, let's say 1 day a week or 1 day a month, not 1 day a week, but 1 day a month. So we did this math yesterday and thinking about if volunteering is so important to that person and you want them to feel fulfilled and be engaged and set yourself apart from other employers who might be competing for that person, so let's give them 1 day a month, 1 day paid a month off. So let's do the math on that. I'll grab my calculator here. So this Joe makes $55,000 a year. Well, he makes 45, but really the true cost is 55,000. So that divided by 2080, the amount of work hours, times 8, the cost of that day off, but day to volunteer, is $211. Now, to think about that, so we did that, there's 12 months, so it's $2,500 that this cost benefit is. So the benefit to the employees that they get paid time to volunteer, and that the cost of that 8-hour day is $2,500, okay? So for the whole year, not just 1 day. But if we had to turn that position, so he's making $55,000 per year, we'll even take the low number times 30%, because if he's not happy and he leaves, it's going to cost us $16,500 to replace him, versus giving him kind of what he wants in 1 day a month paid volunteer time, which is $2,500. So he would have to stay with us for 6 years for that to pay for itself, or for it to offset itself. So we're actually making 6 times that investment of the $2,500 by keeping him happy and allowing him to do that volunteering and still getting paid. So there's all these things that you can use, but what I really wanted to cover was the mindset of investing in your people. So that was a 1 day a month volunteer for 8 hours, and your lost production or your cost of that $2,500 for the year. What if you spent $2,000 a year on their development, sending them to a course or some type of training, if that's what feeds them, depending on what they like. Lots of people like to learn new things, and you investing in that. So if you're investing $2,000 a year on this person who costs you normally $55,000 a year, you're still making good money, because if you had to replace that person, it's going to cost you $16,000. So the return on $2,000 versus $16,000, right? That's good. That's 8 times the amount that it would cost you if you didn't retain that person. So the quick lesson here today is invest in your people, because if they don't stick around, it's going to cost you much more. I know it's not fun to write down the check, but if you put in your budget the cost of turnover and you measured that, and you would be shocked at how much your organization pays in turnover costs. And we don't want that. We want to save you money. We want to save you time. So be good to your people. Spend a little bit of money. The ROI is amazing on those things. So be sure to invest in your people, and they'll invest in you. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.